The moon hung low over the Red Claw Valley, its pale light glinting off the ceremonial stones that circled the heart of the pack's sacred ground. Every young wolf came here when they turned 18, to awaken their inner beast, to prove their fertility and strength before the goddess of the hunt. For most, it was a night of triumph. For Apache, it became a curse. She knelt in the cold earth, her palms slick with sweat despite the chill that swept down from the mountains. Around her, elders chanted, their voices weaving through the smoke of burning sage and bloodroot. Her stepmother, Leora, stood nearest the high priest, her crimson cloak billowing like a tongue of fire. The woman's eyes gleamed with something that looked like pride, but Apache knew better. It was hunger. The test began as the drums rolled like thunder. One by one, the other girls stepped forward, howled to the moon, and shifted into their wolf forms. Silver, golden, brown, each transformation lit the air with the raw pulse of life. When their eyes glowed and the scent of fertility rose like perfume, the crowd roared in celebration. Then came Apache's turn. She closed her eyes, inhaled deeply, and reached inward, searching for the pulse of her wolf. For years she had felt it stir faintly beneath her skin, like a restless dream waiting to be born. But tonight, there was nothing. Only silence. Empty, aching silence. Focus, child, the priest urged. Call your wolf, she tried. She bit her lip until she tasted blood, willed her spirit to rise, begged the goddess to hear her. But the moon gave no answer. The chants faltered. Whispers spread like wildfire among the gathered wolves. When Apache opened her eyes again, Leora was smiling. Enough, the stepmother said smoothly, her tone slicing through the tension. The goddess has spoken. She has no wolf, no life. The blood of her mother runs cold. Gasps broke out around the circle. The elders turned to one another, uncertain. It was rare, unheard of even, for a pure-blood heir to fail the awakening. To be unable to shift meant the spirit within was dormant, or dead. And a dead spirit meant barrenness, no power, no lineage, no future. Apache rose on trembling legs. That's not true, she whispered. I can feel her. She's just quiet. But Leora's words had already poisoned the air. Quiet? The woman laughed softly. The moon does not bless silence, child. You are barren. The pack cannot waste its strength on a hollow vessel. Her father, Alpha Reagan, stood frozen at the edge of the stones. His face was carved with shock, his eyes darting between his daughter and his mate. For a moment, Apache thought he might speak in her defense, but then he lowered his gaze, too easily swayed by the whispers of tradition, too afraid to defy the pack. When the ceremony ended, no one met her eyes. The songs of victory were for others now. She was led away from the firelight, stripped of her ceremonial band, and told to stay within the servants' quarters until the council decided her fate. That night, she sat alone beneath the moon, her body shaking with the kind of grief that could split mountains. She pressed her palm to her chest, willing her wolf to stir to prove them wrong. But the silence persisted, deep and cold as stone. In the distance, Leora watched from the shadows, her red cloak snapping in the wind. The stepmother's voice drifted through the night, soft, almost pitying. A barren girl cannot lead. Better the pack forget she was ever born. Apache clenched her fists, the ember of defiance sparking within her chest. She did not yet know the truth, that the goddess had not forsaken her but protected her, that her wolf slept not out of weakness but because her destiny was greater than any of them could see. But that night, in the cold silence of her disgrace, Apache made a silent vow. If the moon would not speak for her, she would make the earth listen. The days after the failed awakening bled together like a long gray winter. No one spoke to Apache unless they had to. Servants who once bowed to her now looked away when she passed. Children whispered and pointed, calling her ghost-born and moonless. But the worst part wasn't their silence. It was her father's. Alpha Reagan, once fierce and proud, had become a shadow of himself, his strength dulled by Leora's honeyed poison. He spent his nights in council chambers and his mornings avoiding his daughter's eyes. When Apache approached him one dawn, kneeling before him like the loyal daughter she had always been, he didn't even lift his gaze from the scrolls in his hands. Father, she said softly, I need another chance, please, the goddess, she hasn't forsaken me. I can feel it. He sighed heavily, the lines around his mouth deepening. Enough, Apache. You shame yourself by clinging to false hope. The council has spoken. The council, she whispered. Or Leora, That made him flinch, but only for a heartbeat. You will not speak of your mother that way. My mother? Her voice cracked, anger burning through her grief. She is no mother of mine. She's a viper with silk for skin and you can't even see her fangs. Reagan's hand slammed down on the table. Enough! His voice thundered through the chamber, shaking her to her core. You are my daughter no longer. Do you understand? You are packless. Be grateful I do not cast you into the wilds. The words struck harder than claws. She stumbled back, the air gone from her lungs. Leora stood just beyond the doorway, her expression perfectly composed, except for the small, satisfied curl of her lips. That evening, the decision was sealed. A messenger from the Iron Fang clan, a rival pack from the northern border, arrived under the pretense of diplomacy. They were known for their wealth and ruthlessness, and for the cruel alpha who ruled them, Darius Vorn. Leora welcomed them personally, all grace and flattery. As the pack gathered in the courtyard for the farewell feast, Apache stood apart, her wrists bound in ceremonial silver cuffs. The weight of humiliation pressed down on her as the messenger handed over a pouch of gold coins and a scroll marked with Darius's seal. A barren woman for a barren alliance. Leora said sweetly, let her be of use where she cannot shame us. The wolves laughed. Even Reagan did not stop them. Apache met her stepmother's eyes then, steady, burning, unbroken. You think this will end me? She said, her voice quiet but sharp as a blade. You've forgotten one thing, Leora. Leora tilted her head, amused. And what might that be, little wolf? I was born of the Alpha's blood, Apache whispered. And no curse, no false queen can take that from me. For a brief second, something flickered in Leora's gaze. Unease, perhaps, or the faintest recognition that she had made a mistake. But it was gone as quickly as it came. She waved her hand and the guards dragged Apache toward the waiting carriage. The road north was long and cold. Snow fell in thick, whispering sheets, blanketing the forest in white silence. Apache watched it through the bars of the carriage window, her breath fogging the air. She had been betrayed, sold like cattle, branded as useless. But deep inside, a pulse still throbbed, a stubborn, simmering heat. She touched the pendant her real mother had left her, a small moonstone carved with an ancient rune. It glowed faintly against her skin, as if whispering that her story wasn't over. When the carriage finally crested the ridge, she saw the Iron Fang stronghold rising from the frost-bitten valley below, black stone walls and towers crowned in ice. Somewhere within those walls waited Alpha Darius, the man who had unknowingly purchased the pack's greatest mistake. Apache's lips curved just barely, into a smile. They thought they had broken her. But the moon keeps her own secrets, and some wolves are simply born to rise from ruin. The Iron Fang fortress loomed before Apache like a sleeping beast carved from ice and stone. Its towers clawed at the sky, their peaks glazed with frost. Smoke rose from the battlements, dark and heavy against the gray clouds. This was no home. It was a prison wrapped in snow. When the carriage halted, the guards yanked open the doors. Cold air slapped her face as two massive wolves in human form dragged her out by the arms. Their armor bore the sigil of the Iron Fangs, a snarling wolf head encircled by chains. Name, one of them barked. Apache, she said, her voice hoarse from days of silence. He sneered. You'll call yourself what the Alpha permits. They shoved her forward through the gates where a dozen Iron Fang wolves watched her arrival with thinly veiled disdain. Their eyes gleamed with curiosity and mockery both. Word had already spread. The barren daughter of Red Claw had been sold to their Alpha as a peace offering. She was paraded across the courtyard like a trophy no one wanted. Warriors training with spears paused to stare. Servants whispered behind gloved hands. Apache kept her chin high, her steps even, her pride the only thing left that hadn't been stripped from her. Inside, the fortress smelled of pine smoke and iron. The main hall was cavernous, lined with animal pelts and flickering torches that cast long shadows over the stone. At its center sat Alpha Darius Vorn, a man whose presence filled the space before he even spoke. He was taller than any she'd seen, his dark hair falling to his shoulders, his wolf's mark glinting faintly along his throat. His eyes, cold, gray, and sharp as forged steel, studied her with detached curiosity. He looked like a man who trusted no one, feared nothing, and believed even less. So, he said, his voice low and rough, the Red Claw sends me a barren bride. The words bit deep, but Apache did not flinch. I was not sent, Alpha, I was sold. A faint smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. Sold, then. That's honest enough. And what am I supposed to do with a wolf who cannot breed, cannot shift, and cannot serve? You could start, she said, meeting his eyes squarely, by not underestimating her. A murmur rippled through the hall. No one dared speak to Darius that way. He rose slowly from his throne, every movement deliberate, predatory. When he approached, the air seemed to tighten around them. He circled her once, assessing, measuring. You have fire, he said at last. Fire burns fast in this cold. Let's see how long yours lasts. He gestured to one of his lieutenants. Take her to the guest quarters. She's no slave, but she's no maid either. If she causes trouble, chain her. The guards led her down narrow stone corridors, past rooms that smelled of steel and blood, to a chamber lit by a single torch. It was clean, simple, and locked from the outside. When they left her alone, Apache sat on the edge of the bed, breathing in the cold. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to feel the ache in her body and the fury in her soul. Her wrists still bore the faint marks of the silver cuffs. Her throat burned from silence. Yet beneath it all, that pulse, deep, ancient defiance, still beat within her. She went to the small window overlooking the courtyard. The moon had risen pale and distant, framed by drifting clouds. She pressed her fingers against the frost-laced glass and whispered to it softly, They think me broken, Mother, but you said the moon hides her warriors before the battle. If that's true, then my time will come. Below, the Iron Fang wolves trained under the moonlight. She studied their movements, their discipline, their strength. If she was to survive here, no, if she was to rise, she needed to learn, to listen, to wait. And when the moment came, when the goddess stirred within her again, she would not just prove her worth, she would make them all remember the name Apache. The Iron Fangs woke before dawn, their howls breaking across the icy hills like thunder. For 3 days, Apache watched them from her small barred window, training, fighting, shifting at will beneath the pale glow of the moon. Their discipline was brutal, their loyalty absolute, and she was the outsider, the barren wolf, the southerner who couldn't even call her spirit. Darius had not spoken to her since her arrival. He was a man of few words and many expectations, and she could feel his scrutiny even when he wasn't in the room. He wanted to see her crumble, to prove that the Red Claw's gift was nothing more than a burden. But Apache had not survived betrayal and exile to kneel. On the morning of the 4th day, she was summoned to the courtyard. The frost cracked under her boots as she stepped outside, her breath fogging the air. The Iron Fang warriors were already assembled in a wide circle, their gazes sharp and assessing. In the center stood Darius, dressed in black leathers, a cloak of wolf fur draped over his shoulders. When she approached, he turned to her, eyes gray and unreadable. Tell me, Red Claw, he said. Do you know why I allowed you to stay? She met his stare without flinching. Because killing me would prove you feared what I might become. The corner of his mouth twitched. Careful, he said quietly. Pride can be a slow death. He paced a slow circle around her. You claim strength, yet you have no wolf. You claim worth, yet you've been cast away by your bloodline. I have no use for dead things, Apache. I'm not dead, she said, her voice low but steady. Just buried. And everything buried learns how to rise, the crowd murmured. Darius stopped pacing and regarded her for a long moment. Then, with a gesture, he called for silence. 3 days, he said finally. That's what you have. 3 days to prove you're more than what they said you are. If you fail, I'll send you back to the wilds, or to your stepmother, whichever fate suits you better. Apache's heart pounded. And if I succeed? His eyes glinted like steel under the dawn light. Then you earn a place here. No chains, no pity, she nodded once. Then I accept. A ripple of surprise passed through the gathered wolves. Darius inclined his head. Good. Your first test begins now. He pointed toward the edge of the training field, where a row of hunters stood beside a corral holding 3 massive deer boars, creatures with tusks as long as her arm and hides thick as bark. You'll join today's hunt. Bring me one alive before sunset. The warriors exchanged glances. One of them laughed. She'll be dead before noon. Darius ignored him. If you survive, you'll eat at my table. If not, the snow will claim what's left. The crowd dispersed to prepare. Apache stood rooted for a moment, staring at the beasts, feeling the sting of every pair of mocking eyes on her. Her hands trembled. not from fear but from the raw surge of defiance rising through her. The red claw might have disowned her, but the moon still watched, and she would not let it see her break. That afternoon, armed with only a short spear and her instincts, she followed the hunters into the white pine forest. The cold bit at her skin, the scent of pine thick in the air. The iron-fang wolves moved with fluid precision, shifting into their beasts with ease, their growls echoing through the trees. She ran beside them, human among monsters, but her heart kept pace. Her pulse thudded in rhythm with theirs. Somewhere deep inside something stirred, faint but alive. A whisper, a heartbeat, a breath of power. It was her wolf, watching, waiting. As the first dire boar broke from the brush with a roar, Apache tightened her grip on the spear and met its charge head-on. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel empty. She felt alive. The forest was alive with movement and breath and danger. Frost shimmered on the pines, their branches heavy with snow that fell in slow, deliberate drifts. The ironfang hunters fanned out through the trees, silent as ghosts, their senses sharpened to every sound. Apache kept close, her spear angled low, eyes scanning the underbrush. Her body was tired from sleepless nights and hunger, but her spirit burned with quiet fury. She had 3 days to prove her worth, or die trying. The first dire boar's roar shattered the stillness. It crashed through the trees ahead, a wall of muscle and rage, tusks gleaming like curved daggers. The hunter shouted, scattering to encircle it, but the creature was fast, too fast. It slammed one warrior aside, sending him flying into the snow with a grunt of pain. Apache didn't think. She moved. She sprinted forward, her boots slipping on ice, spear poised. Every heartbeat pounded like a drum in her ears. As the boar charged, she sidestepped and struck low, the spear's iron tip biting deep into its flank. The beast bellowed, thrashing, blood splattering across the snow. "Fool," one of the iron fangs snarled, yanking her back. "You'll get yourself killed." "Then I'll die fighting," she spat, wrenching her arm free. They fought in chaos, steel against hide, claws against fury. The deer boar swung its tusks, catching a warrior's leg and hurling him into a tree. Apache ducked beneath another strike, rolled through the snow, and came up behind it. Her breath burned white in the air. For a heartbeat, the world slowed. She saw the creature's muscles coil, the steam rising from its wounds, the way its eyes rolled with blind rage. And something shifted inside her. The air around her thickened. Her senses sharpened beyond human limits. She could hear the boar's pulse hammering, smell its fear through the iron tang of blood. Her vision tinged with silver at the edges, strange, wild. Divine, the wolf within her stirred. With a roar that didn't sound entirely human, she drove her spear deep into the boar's neck, angling it up beneath the jaw. The creature screamed, its legs buckling as it crashed into the snow. The ground trembled with the impact. When silence finally fell, the hunters stared. The boar lay still, breathing shallowly but alive, just as Darius had commanded. Apache stood over it, chest heaving, blood streaked across her arms, her eyes glowing faintly with a silver hue that none could explain. She broke the silence herself. "Help me bind it," she said, her voice rough but steady. No one moved at first. Then one of the younger warriors, a broad-shouldered man named Jorek, stepped forward, a grin tugging at his lips. "You heard her," he muttered. Alpha said alive. Reluctantly, the others obeyed. Together, they secured the beast with chains and ropes, dragging it back toward the stronghold. Apache limped alongside them, every muscle aching, every breath a reminder that she was still standing. By the time they returned to the courtyard, dusk had fallen. The air was thick with the scent of pine and blood. Darius stood waiting by the gate, his arms crossed, expression unreadable. When his eyes fell on the still-breathing dire boar, his brows lifted slightly. "You did this?" Apache met his gaze, weary but unyielding. "You asked for one alive." He studied her for a long moment before nodding once. "So I did." The other wolves shifted uneasily, murmuring to one another. It wasn't just that she'd survived the hunt, it was that she'd done the impossible. Darius stepped closer, his tone low and measured. "Tomorrow you'll face the healer's trial. Let's see if you can keep something alive instead of nearly killing it." She almost smiled. "If the goddess wills it, Alpha, I'll do more than that." As he turned away, she caught the faintest glimmer of something rare in his expression. Respect or curiosity, she couldn't tell. But one thing was certain. The barren daughter of Red Claw had drawn first blood in the north, and the Iron Fang wolves would not soon forget her name. The dawn came quiet and gray, the fortress still cloaked in mist. The Iron Fang courtyard smelled of smoke and blood, reminders of yesterday's hunt. The dire boar Apache had captured lay penned in the stables, chained but alive, its massive chest rising and falling in slow, labored breaths. Apache hadn't slept. Her muscles screamed, her palms were raw, but she'd spent the night pacing, replaying every heartbeat of the battle. For the first time she had felt her wolf stir. Not fully, not enough to shift, but enough to taste the power sleeping inside her veins. It frightened her as much as it thrilled her. At sunrise, she was summoned again, not to the training field this time, but to the infirmary hall. The air there was thick with herbs, smoke, and pain. Injured wolves lined the benches, some wrapped in bloodied bandages, others writhing in silence. At the far end, Alpha Darius stood beside the Iron Fang healer, an elderly woman with sharp eyes and silver braids. When Apache entered, Darius didn't speak immediately. He just watched her, expression unreadable, arms folded across his chest. The healer turned toward her. "The Alpha wishes to test another claim," she said. "They say you carry barren blood and that the goddess gave you no gift. Today we see if that's true." Apache frowned. "You want me to heal someone?" The woman gestured toward a small pup lying still on a cot, no more than 8 years old, his fur matted with sweat, his breathing shallow. "Poison," the healer said softly. "Snake bite from the wildwoods. He won't last till dusk. I have tried everything." Apache's chest tightened. The child's scent was fading, faint, flickering like smoke in the wind. She looked to Darius. He met her gaze evenly. "Save him," he said, "or admit what they say about you is true." She felt the challenge in every word. Taking a slow breath, Apache knelt beside the pup. His small hand was cold. The bite wound on his arm was dark and swollen, the veins around it streaked black. The healer had done her best, but the poison had sunk too deep. For a moment, doubt clawed at her. What if this was beyond her? What if Leora had been right all along? That she carried no true power, no wolf, no worth? Then she remembered her mother's voice, soft as moonlight in her childhood memories. "The goddess speaks through pain, my little wolf. Sometimes the hurt is the key." Apache closed her eyes. She pressed one hand to the pup's chest and another over his wound. Her breath steadied. Her heartbeat slowed. Deep inside, she called, not with words, but with the raw ache of her spirit. "If you can hear me, if you ever lived inside me, I need you now." At first, nothing happened. Then a warmth, a pulse, soft and ancient, flickering beneath her skin. Her fingers tingled. The air around her shimmered faintly, and a faint silver glow bled from her palms. Gasps filled the room. The black veins around the wound began to fade. The pup's breathing deepened. His small chest rose stronger, fuller, steadier. The dark poison mark lightened, shrinking until only a faint scar remained. When Apache finally opened her eyes, her palms still glowed faintly with silvery light. The pup stirred, whispering weakly, "It's warm, like moonfire." Then he slept, peacefully this time. Silence filled the infirmary. The healer's mouth trembled slightly. I have never seen." Darius stepped closer, his gaze locked on Apache, his expression unreadable. "What did you do?" She shook her head, breathing hard. "I don't know, it just came." The healer bowed her head. "The goddess's hand," she murmured. "The barren girl carries the lost gift, the old magic." Apache staggered to her feet, dizzy but alive. Her hand still hummed faintly with power. She met Darius's gaze and managed a small, tired smile. "You asked me to keep something alive," she said softly. "I did." For the first time, something like respect flickered openly in his eyes. "You did," he agreed quietly. "And tomorrow you face the final day. Be ready, Redclaw. The moon is watching you." As she left the infirmary, the whispers followed her. Not scorn this time, but awe. They had called her barren. But in one breath, with one touch, Apache had called back life itself. And for the first time, the Iron Fang wolves began to wonder if the moon's silence had been protection all along. The third dawn came heavy with silence, the kind of silence that feels alive, waiting, holding its breath. Snow fell in thin silver sheets over the Iron Fang stronghold. The world seemed muted, suspended in that gray hour before sunrise. Apache stood at the edge of the courtyard, her hands bare despite the cold, her heart steady. She could feel the day pulsing beneath her skin, the day the goddess had promised in whispers and dreams. Darius had called for the final trial at first light. No rules, no instructions, only this. Survive what comes. The pack gathered in a wide circle around her. The Iron Fangs had come to see if the Red Claw's castaway would finally fall, or rise. Even the air felt tense, charged with unseen power. Darius stepped into the ring dressed in black, his wolf's mark glowing faintly against his neck. His gaze was unreadable, but beneath the cold precision Apache saw it. Curiosity, respect, and a flicker of something deeper. 3 days, he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. You've bled, you've healed, you've endured. But strength isn't proven by victory, Apache. It's proven by surrender. She frowned. Surrender? He nodded once. To your truth. To the part of you you've been fighting your whole life. Today you stop running from it. Before she could speak, he raised his hand. The air trembled. 4 warriors shifted in unison, bodies twisting, bones reshaping, fur bursting from skin. They became massive wolves, gray and silver, their eyes gleaming with primal hunger. The crowd roared. Apache's breath hitched. She had faced monsters before, but these were different. Not beasts, but soldiers honed by blood and loyalty. Face them, Darius said. If your wolf lives, she will answer. The first wolf lunged. She barely dodged, rolling through the snow. The second came from behind, teeth snapping. She twisted, catching its muzzle with her forearm, feeling the sting of its bite pierce flesh. Pain flared white-hot. The third hit her side, sending her sprawling into the icy ground. She gasped, snow stinging her lungs, blood dripping from her sleeve. The wolves circled, 3 shadows in motion, growling low, waiting for her to rise. Her body trembled. Her vision blurred. The cold crept deep, pulling her toward darkness. Maybe this is it, she thought dimly. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was never meant to, but then a sound. Low, deep, ancient, it began as a heartbeat, not hers. The earth itself pulsed beneath her palms. Slow, deliberate, like a drum calling across the ages. The moonlight, pale and distant, broke through the clouds and spilled over her. It touched her skin like a lover's hand, and suddenly she heard it. Her wolf. Not a whisper this time. A roar, vast and wild, echoing through every vein. Her pain dissolved into heat. Her breath became fire. The world tilted and bent as the power she had buried for years surged to the surface. Apache threw her head back and screamed. But the sound that tore from her throat was not human. It was a howl, pure and fierce and unbroken. Light exploded around her, silver fire wrapping her body. The air rippled with power as her bones shifted, her muscles realigned, and her skin rippled into fur as white as snow under moonlight. The crowd fell silent. Even the attacking wolves froze. When the light faded, she stood there, tall and radiant, her wolf form unlike any they had ever seen. Not gray, not black, but pure silver white, her eyes glowing with molten moonlight. Darius took a slow step forward, his voice low with awe. The Moonborn. Apache lifted her muzzle and howled again, not in defiance but in triumph. The sound rolled through the mountains, shaking the snow from the trees, echoing across the frozen valleys. One by one, the Iron Fang wolves bowed their heads. Even Darius did not speak. He only watched as she shifted back, kneeling in the snow, breathless and trembling, but alive. The mark of the goddess blazed across her skin, bright and sacred, and for the first time since her exile, Apache smiled through her tears. The barren girl was gone. The Alpha had awakened. The moon lingered high long after dawn should have broken, as if the heavens themselves refused to turn away from what they had just witnessed. The courtyard still shimmered faintly with the silver light that had erupted from Apache's awakening. No one spoke. Not even Darius. Apache knelt in the snow, her breath forming soft clouds in the frozen air. Her body trembled from the strain of the transformation, her skin marked by faint trails of light that pulsed like living runes. Every breath she drew hummed with power, ancient, familiar, and impossibly vast. For a long moment, no one dared to move. Then the fortress doors creaked open, and the Iron Fang healer stepped forward, falling to her knees before Apache. The goddess has touched her, the woman whispered. I can feel her presence. She bears the mark of the Moonborn. The word rippled through the pack. Moonborn, a title spoken only in old stories. the kind told beside fires when pups begged for legends. They said the Moonborn were chosen directly by the goddess. Wolves who carried divine blood, meant not for ordinary life, but for destiny itself. Darius approached slowly, his boots crunching against the frost. The Alpha's usual calm had cracked. Awe shadowed his face. So it's true, he murmured. The Red Claw didn't birth a curse. They birthed a miracle. Apache looked up, her voice soft but steady. I was told I was barren. That the goddess turned from me. The healer shook her head. No child of the moon is barren. The goddess sealed your power until the world was ready for it. Until you were ready. Memories surged through Apache's mind. The failed awakening. Her stepmother's cruel smile, her father's silence. Every humiliation, every whisper of unworthy and empty. She clenched her fists against the ache rising in her chest. They called me cursed, she said quietly. And they sold me for gold. The cursed, Darius said, often carry the weight of the divine. He extended his hand to her. Stand, Apache. The pack bows to no one but the goddess Enku, and I think she just bowed to you. She hesitated, then took his hand. His grip was strong, grounding, steady. When she rose, the gathered iron-fanged wolves knelt as one. Their heads bowed low. The sight stole her breath. These wolves, Darius said, his gaze sweeping over the bowed crowd, kneel not to blood or name, but to strength. And today you showed them both. The Moonborn Alpha stands among us. The words echoed like thunder through the courtyard. Apache's throat tightened. For years she had carried shame like a chain. Now the same moon that once judged her bathed her in light. Tears burned her eyes, but she held them back, lifting her chin to the sky. I don't want a title, she said. I want truth. The healer stepped closer. Then hear it, Moonborn. When you failed your awakening, the goddess's mark was hidden. A seal meant to protect your spirit from those who would exploit it. Your stepmother must have known. Only one who tampered with sacred rites could twist the ceremony's power. Apache's blood ran cold. Leora, she corrupted your trial, the healer continued. To make you appear barren, to take your inheritance. But the goddess cannot be silenced forever. Apache's jaw tightened. So that was it. The whispers, the betrayal, the sale, all of it born of greed and fear. Darius's eyes darkened. Then your stepmother has committed heresy against the moon's will. Such sin demands retribution. Apache's voice was quiet, but every word dripped with fire. She'll get it. She turned her face to the night sky, the silver mark across her collarbone glowing brighter with each breath. The moon above shimmered, responding to her unspoken vow. For the first time, she didn't just feel the goddess watching. She felt her answering. And in that silent communion, Apache understood her purpose. She was not born to bear heirs or serve as a pawn in another's game. She was born to cleanse the rot. From the packs, to unite them under the moon's light once more. The girl they had called barren had been chosen instead to bring forth a new era. The Alpha's blood burned in her veins. The goddess's mark shone on her skin, and vengeance pure and righteous began to take form in her heart.